According to a UCLA study in 2017, families in America are spending less and less time with each other. One of the cited reasons is that we have varying political views. Basically, we can't sit with each other any longer. Now, if you've been listening, we are doing a series on handling difficult conversations in our Filipino relationships. The last episode, if you haven't listened, is Talking with In-Laws. Today, we're talking about handling difficult conversation when we have different political viewpoints.
Are Filipinos truly bilingual? We use the same language at home but speak in love languages foreign to each other, together but separated. Kamusta? I'm Roanne, licensed psychotherapist mom, immigrant twice, first-generation Pinoy raising my mixed Filipino American children in America. I found that after visiting 500 Filipino homes, I continue to be a student of the culture. In this podcast, we would be seatmates in this beautiful cultural classroom. And by the way, did I tell you I need my kapeng barako straight from Batangas before each class? If you're interested in learning the deep intricacies of the Filipino culture, especially as it merged with American culture, talks about trauma-informed care, and deepening your Filipino relationships across generations, which includes my fave topic, Pinoy love languages, you're in the right place.
This episode is brought to you by Story Therapy Framework. It's the framework I created. It is not a program. It is understanding that talking is not enough. Otherwise, you would have talked your way out of what's ailing you. So this type of story therapy incorporates the use of your imagination. Because when you think about it, usually things are not there, but they're in your head. So imagination, and it recalibrate your language so you speak impeccable about yourself and what's actually happening. And it's not about just being positive, it's actually being accurate and correcting your experience. So now you truly become the engineer of your story. Story therapy, if you are interested in booking a free consult, the link is in the episode notes. Welcome everyone, this is Roanne Samuels. Marami pong salamat sa pakikinig. I understand that you might be driving, doing laundry. I myself don't just listen to podcasts and I'm just kind of listening to the podcast. I'm usually busy doing some other things. So I hope you're doing well. Maraming salamat sa pakikinig. Let's just start. When I was growing up, my experience is that my parents talk about their political viewpoints very openly at the dinner table. Yes, you know, Filipinos like to chat. And this trend is a disheartening trend. So today we're going to focus on what to do about it. The first one is to remember is the way we talk about political viewpoints. We have different worldviews and we rarely see things as they are. And this is a particularly famous quote, but we see them as we are, right? It often happens with couples where if you serve a coffee and it's cold all the time to your partner and she laments or he laments, ano ba yan? Ang lamig-lamig ng kape, the coffee is so cold, right? And if you do that enough times, most of the time people are no longer complaining about the coffee, but that there is a issue. So the topic is the coffee, but the issue is like you don't really know me well, or that perhaps one would say you don't even ask about my preference, you don't try to understand me. So sometimes with political views it's very similar. Somebody's just talking about the coffee, but someone might think that there's a deeper issue. One does not want to talk about, but just want to talk about the coffee. So just understand that we have different live experiences. If you're talking to your parents, elders, cousins, thereby, we have a different way of viewing the world. And nothing is truly personal. unless you take it personal. Of course, there are many movements in the world in which if, for instance, women didn't take it personal, right, that they could not vote, we probably still don't have the right for suffrage. So there is space for that, but when I am saying is in general, when you're having a conversation with someone else, it doesn't have to be your parents, things are rarely personal unless you take them personal. Most of the time, because of the kwentuhan style of Filipinos, people talk not to convince, although they might do that, but in general, they might do small talks to connect, to get to know someone, to get some chismis even. In the Western culture style of communication, when you share an opinion, it's basically an information you're giving to the person. You might debate it. It's a very linear culture. I'm not saying that people are just sharing ABC and trying to debate it. The English language is very linear. So what you see, it's asking for accuracy and precision. So if you're trying to share information, usually the American or the one from the Western culture may be curious, why are you sharing this information? Unless there's an agreement that it's basically you have this type of friendship where you're just talking about stuff, and that can happen too. And what I'm saying is, more in the islands, people just talk and talk like small talk. You know, this type of practice is also honed because there's more hierarchical framework in our culture, whether you agree with it or not. And there's more practice to agree with the speaker rather than to agree to what is being said. So because we are taught to be polite, many people are nodding. And I do this too. I'm nodding because I'm respecting and honoring the speaker, but not necessarily that I'm agreeing of what's being said. So two different things. And I think in the American culture, it's asking for consistency. One of the interesting observation I had when I moved to America as an immigrant, and then one of my first jobs here in America was I was a kindergarten teacher. I also did a home visiting program. I was a developmental specialist, basically checking on parents and their children. I noticed that in America, the word lying was used so much more frequently. And I have done hundreds of home visits. I didn't tally this, so I could not say that I have empirical evidence. But if I would have tallied it, I'm pretty sure I would have more occurrences of parents saying, you lied. Because there's a linearity in the English language. It has to be something that is accurate, it's linear, it's consistent. So that's one. I do notice that the younger Filipino Americans are more likely to not be able to sit longer because of what I just said. There's an asking to be consistent, and they're inconsistent with their language because the Filipino Tagalog, whatever dialect you speak, it's not the actual language, but the way we speak it, the way we communicate is a bit more circular. Okay, so if you are from a Western culture, and I'm not talking about the person but the culture, your opinion is you. Basically, you are what you said you are or say that you are. But for the other person, opinions are just that. They are fluid and they can be changed. So first, again, we rarely see things as they are. We see them as we are. And to remember that people have different viewpoints because we all have different lived experiences, and people share things for whatever purpose they are doing it for. Nothing is personal unless you take it personal, and of course I said there's room for deviation there. So the one that I just mentioned is that the style of our kwentuhan. Third, you always hear this and people are like, what does that really mean? To be curious. People can only see what they can see. So if you have a flashlight and the beam is low, maybe it doesn't have a strong enough battery, and you're in a dark freeway, you can only see as far as you can see based on your flashlight, right? Similarly, if you're on top of the mountain and you're asking somebody in the river down there to look at what you are seeing from the top of the river, it is hardly, there's the radar of persuasion. I forgot I think the catalyst of change is the book, where you can't really persuade someone if they can't really see from where you're standing, for instance, from the mountain, the cloud. So you have to talk to them and go down the mountain so that you could point out things to them closer to the river where they're at. When you do this, mind your tone, because even though you believe you're curious, if you do have an agenda of convincing, the person who's listening could really feel that radar that you want the other person to be convinced, and vice versa. Be curious, mind your tone, go down the river. Usually, it's not so much about even telling a person, but asking. If you are just curious about, like, why do you think that is? Convincing conspiracy theory believer, and what the author found to be effective would be motivational interviewing and just being with the person instead of canceling them. So asking questions like, oh, okay, if you think A equals B, do you think this, right? So if you could talk about real political issues and just keep following their trail, so that you could also get to a point where you may not agree, but maybe you could understand where they're coming from. Now, all things would be a loss if we don't know how to relax our bodies. So if you are like, oh, I'm going to be curious, or I'm going to ask them some questions, but if you feel your body is stiffening, take a break. Or what's better is to really, before you enter the situation, soften your gaze, see if your body's activated. Sometimes I appreciate activism, but some activists have a very activated body. And there's really a difference with activists who this is their highest purpose. They are not destructive to themselves and to others. So that's the fourth one or the fifth one that I shared. By the way, if you have a hard time, you're feeling so activated, you do have a hard time calming your body, and you've tried so many things, come join me and book a free consult for the story therapy framework. Finally, hang out a little bit longer in your parents' home, with your friends. Again, I mentioned soften your gaze. Know them a little bit more so they can also know you back a little bit more. My practice is I hang out with people that have very different political views, but I like them. In that way, this is neuroscience, my friends. We don't put people in certain categories. You don't say if somebody drives this, they're wearing this color, they're like bad people, they voted for this person. Try to be more curious and open, and you could do that by mixing up, confusing your categories, because every big category has subcategories. So if you could actually find a person that might be driving a particular truck or color, see how I'm stereotyping here, but you like them, and that would confuse your brain and would keep you open so you are not easily triggered. I hope that's been helpful. Handling difficult conversation, especially when there's different political viewpoints, is possible. I hope you're taking good care of your loved ones. Again, this is Roanne Samuels, licensed psychotherapist here in California. Bye now.